Hey guys, and welcome back to the HH YouTube channel. Today we're going to be doing another video on Raid Shadow Legends, and specifically looking today at artifact sets and how they actually work in the game, and adding some information that may not be completely obvious to you in the game. Some of this video may be a little bit boring, a little bit obvious to some people, but we'll, as always with all these types of videos, put bookmarks at the bottom of the screen so you can find particular information about the set that you're interested in. So let's get started. So obviously with artifact sets, they can be very powerful, but not always a requirement, especially in the early game where you are building your champions up for the first time. Sometimes you just want to look for stats over sets, but then it comes to a point where you really want to utilize the value of the sets. So we're going to jump in and we're going to look at these now. So in Raid Shadow Legends, we have three effectively types of artifact sets. We have sets that will increase your primary stats, such as HP, attack, defense. We have sets that will give you some form of buff, and then we have sets that will cause an effect, either applying debuffs or multiplication effects. So when we say primary stat sets, we actually mean sets such as life, offense, cruel, speed, immortal. These are sets that give you raw or percentage based base stat values. The key thing to know about these sets are they work off your base stats. So when it's a percentage, you'll multiply the base stat by that percentage. So in this example, we will use speed. Speed gives you 12% of your base speed. So if you have 100 speed, you get 12 speed from one speed set. And then they add together. So if you've got 3 speed sets, then you'll get 12 plus 12 plus 12, 36. When you have additives, such as perception, accuracy, resist, you'll get that raw stat added onto your total. So you'll get plus 40 accuracy. Now, Lore of Steel is a mastery in the support tree. This will increase the amount of additional stat you get from the set. So it doesn't add 15% onto the 12% for speed. It effectively gives you 15% more of the set value. So what I mean by this is, say like we had Lore of Steel with speed set, and our base stat was 100. We have 100 times 0.12, that gives us 12% of our base speed of 12 speed. Now Lore of Steel will give you 15% more of that 12, so you end up with something in the region of 1.8, and then that gets rounded up. That's why you'll see often when you use Deadwood Jedi's calculator, it talks about true speed, and that's how it actually rounds and calculates speed, because you're never truly getting a full rounded number in the actual game code. Lore of Steel works on all stat sets that increase from 2p sets, so that can be critical damage. You'll get an extra 15% from that extra critical damage. Resist, accuracy, perception, cruel, immortal, all of those sets, and they're pretty rudimentary across all of the different artifact sets in the game. Now when we talk about buff sets, we're talking about sets that will give you a buff at the start of each round. So what we mean by a round is the floor that you're particularly on. Has 3 rounds, so 3 sets of enemies. So this resets every round. A clan boss is a single round, so you'll only ever get it at the start of the clan boss run. You won't get it per turn. These types of sets include immunity, which will give you a 2-turn block debuffs buff. You can also get swift parry, which has a 50% chance to give you an unkillable buff if you're about to take a fatal hit. And then of course the divine sets will give you a 3-turn shield buff, and the shield set will give you a 3-turn shield buff for the team. These sets are pretty self-explanatory. 30% HP means that if I've got 30,000 HP on my champion with a shield set, then everyone is going to get 10,000 as a shield. And as I said, it's every round. Now the ones that tends to cause a lot of confusion and are not necessarily very clear are effect type sets. So when we mean effect, what I mean by that is effects could be a debuff, an instant effect, or a multiplication where it increases or decreases the damage. Instance, we could be increasing turn meter, increasing duration, and debuffs are obviously block debuffs, those sorts of things. The key thing to note with any effect set here is accuracy is never required to apply the debuff or the instant or any of the nature of those sets. So if you've got a stun set champion, it doesn't require accuracy. If you've got a taunting, it doesn't require accuracy. It'll always land, which is very powerful if you've got a champion or you're trying to min-max and you want more defense and you can't really fit the accuracy. Well, you don't need it if this is the set you're relying on. So we're going to go through a few sets here. So Destroy set is the first one up. Now what Destroy set does is very important for the Scarab boss, is it will decrease the target's maximum HP, When we mean maximum, you can heal up to that, but it won't heal above that number. And it does this on 40% of the damage you inflict. Now, what is not obvious in the game is the effects on the destroy set have some limitations. For example, you can't go and destroy more than 40% of a target's HP from damage. There is a situation in the game where you can increase a further 20% from non-damaging effects, although those types of effects are very limited, and off the top of my head I cannot think of one where it doesn't require some form of damage to have taken place. And in addition to that, you can't destroy more than 8% in one hit. So therefore, if you wanted to be super min-maxed, you'd need to go through 5 fully stacked, so 8%, to hit your 40% maximum. This is why a lot of the time destroy set is not used unless it really is required, because it doesn't actually decrease a significant amount. Even champions you see in the game such as Anithwi, who decrease a lot based on hitting reasonably hard, it's still not crazy amounts. So that the actual impact to destroy max HP is not a very valuable effect unless you're doing Scarab Boss where it's limiting the ability for you to do damage. So the one set that I did see comments requesting us to explain a little bit further on how it worked was the Fury set. So in most situations where you can't control your HP or you don't really want to lose HP, Fury is not very good. So in Doom Tower you want to be tanky and healthy. In Arena, Fury is not really going to be helpful unless you know you're going to guarantee yourself some form of unkillable in the form of Skull Crown of those natures. And generally then you would want to look at different sets such as Savage. But what Fury set is very good at, in Clan Boss, if you don't have the flexibility of being able to choose something like Relentless, or you're very narrow in terms of your ability to manipulate turn meter in any way, you have to have consistency, then Fury is a good way of giving yourself more damage with just one set. So how Fury works, every time you lose HP, you gain a bit of damage up to a value cap. So you can get up to 25% more damage, and that is capped at that figure. So by 50% HP, you'll be at full cap. So the way it works, the formula's on the screen. You take the damage, you multiply it with 1 minus your current HP and divide it by 2, because obviously there's a value cap of 25%. So in our example here, if we were at 67% HP and we dealt 40,000 damage, then we will effectively be increasing our own damage by about 16.5%, and therefore we'll actually deal an extra 6,660 damage. So it's a sliding scale. It's never intervals. It's not every 5%, every 10%. It's whatever number I'm at is however much I will do damage. So as long as you're below 50% HP, you can be at 40%, 30%. That doesn't really matter anymore. You'll be at maximum efficiency for your Fury set, and you'll gain effectively an extra weaken on the enemy. Now, if you are planning on using Fury set, you should 100% avoid healing effects, such as Life Drinker, such as that's the Life Drinker Mastery, and any other things like Leech, Internal Healing. Immortal is probably okay because you've got that 49% limit before you start losing the effectiveness of Fury. And it also works really well with Grim Resolve. So yes, that's how Fury works. 50% HP, you're now at full Fury efficiency. So the next set we're going to look at is Curing Set. Now, Curing Set sounds powerful, but in all eventuality, when you start looking at the impact, it's actually quite weak. Curing Set is meant to increase the healing output of any healer, and what I mean by that is the set only works if you are the producing healer, your ability. You can't gain it from other sources of healing unless you are also the source of healing. You'll get 20% more healing. So what does that mean? If we healed for 2,000, we'll get 400 more HP on that heal. Now what you end up finding is strong healers, such as Chancellor Yasmin, might find that her heal goes from 2,400 because she heals for 60% on low HP to, 2,800 or 2,900. However, it's a 2-turn cooldown. So in those situations, you'd be better off running 2 speed sets so that she was quicker in rotating back to the heal than trying to get 20% more heal. 100% is better than 20% if you can get that 100% more regularly. And in another instance, such as someone like Vrask, if you run him in Relentless, then that one Relentless proc is easily going to overtake the Curing set. So in general situations, there's niche usages where it can be good. If you have a particular Curing set that's really strong, very fast, or that nature, then yes, it can be valuable. But if you're looking at it from should I be going for Curing Set, it's probably not worth it over Speed or Relentless. So this next section, we're going to cover about 4 or 5 sets that all fall under the same barrier, which are debuff applying sets. So these sets are Cursed, Toxic, Dazed, Stun, and Taunting. These apply, Toxic, for example, applies Poison. Cursed, for example, applies heal reduction. Some of these debuffs are more valuable than others, such as Daze is almost useless because Sleep wakes up from everything, whereas Stun is much more valuable because you can't wake up from this. The key thing that I wanted to point out with these types of sets is they differ from the Frost and the Frostbite sets. Cursed, Toxic, Dazed, Stun, and Taunting, you have to be attacking the enemy to get those effects. Now again, you don't need accuracy to land, and you can, I believe, land all of these abilities with a 5% extra chance if you pick the Mastery. I think it's called Fearsome Presence off the top of my head. This ability has to be attacked. You have to be initiating the attack. Whereas with Frost and Frostbite, you have to be attacked yourself. The enemy must be attacking you to apply those debuffs. So it's kind of an important thing to know the difference of that Frost and Frostbite can only be applied if you're getting attacked. And Frostbite is very powerful, especially against teams that have freeze built in, such as Shivamani's. It can cause havoc, although you are relying on the Gods of Chaos and RNG. So the next set we're going to talk about here is Relentless Set. Now, obviously 18% chance to gain an extra turn. That's pure probabilities. You know, over 100 turns, I'll probably get on average 18 extra turns. Now, what is in the description and in the code in the small print is consecutive extra turns are actually suffering from reduction of chance. So every time you get an extra turn, the next chance of getting an extra turn consecutively is reduced by 45%. So therefore, eventually you'll run out of odds of being able to run multiple extra turns all at the same time. This buff was put in place when Relentless was really super strong. But having this in place now means that you can gain extra turns consecutively, but the likelihood of you gaining more than 3 is quite low. However, one thing in our testing that we did find is that the Relentless set as an artifact set, similar to the way that artifact sets and for shield and skills for shield stack, your extra turns from skills also can stack with Relentless. So in a champion like Whisper, who has a built-in 10% chance against bosses to gain an extra turn, she can get 2 at the same time, which means she will do it in order. She will go Relentless proc, then her skill proc, so she'll gain both, even though it procs at the same time. It won't pick one. So that can be quite powerful. If you put someone like Whisper in a Relentless set, you will get loads and loads of extra turns. Generally speaking, Relentless is super powerful. It is great with champions such as Scylla the Drakes, Vrask, Doom Priest comes to mind, more passive procs. Anyone who does a passive effect, which is very powerful, like passive healing, Relentless sets will give you those extra turns. And obviously, if you can support it in your clan boss turn, Relentless will get you much more damage, especially with champions like Ninja, where you can potentially get up to an extra 5 to 10 million damage just from the set alone. So a slightly less popular set now, Retaliation Avenging. So Retaliation is the set that will allow you to counterattack. I believe it's 35% on every hit. So in essence, Retaliation is more accessible than Avenging in the sense that every time you hit, there's a 1 in 3 chance, give or take, that you'll be able to counterattack. Now, the Retaliation set does suffer from the counterattack damage reduction. In the in-game text, I think it is described as 65%, which is actually incorrect. It's 75%. Every counterattack ability when you counterattack is reduced by 25%. So Retaliation suffers from that. Now, slightly different with Avenging. Avenging is less accessible in the sense that you have to be critically hit, and then you have a 45% chance of counterattacking. But it doesn't suffer from the counterattack debuff of 25% damage. So you'll actually deal 100% under an Avenging. Now, in certain situations, you can almost guarantee you're going to get 100% crit. We're talking arena. If you put someone like a Skull Crown or a Sinisha in an Avenging set, then you've got a 1 in 2 chance effectively of counterattacking with 100% of their A1. It's very powerful, especially in arena defenses where you are looking to guarantee you're going to go second because you haven't got the speed lead. Potentially, if they've got 2 hitters or 3 hitters and are not their designated damage dealers, you could get a lot of counterattacks going and just nuke them down that way. Also, I know there's, I think it's Ian K out there loves his retaliation set for Clan Boss, and I've seen some insane numbers with retaliation on Turvolds. So again, retaliation is not a terrible set at all, 35% chance. It's not the best set, it's very niche, but certainly can get some value out of it. Now, the more obvious set that everyone knows about is obviously Savage and Cruel. Very powerful ability to deal more damage. So the key thing I wanted to point out here, rather than go into the detail of Ignore Defense, is effectively Ignore Defense is always calculated after you've done any debuffs. So that means that, say like I have a Savage set, it'll be 25% of the remaining defense value after I've reduced it by a decreased defense. Additionally, Cruel, Savage, and any other forms of Ignore Defense, including skills, they all stack additively. So I will reduce 30% if I have a Savage and Cruel. If I had Helm Smasher, it would be 55%, and so forth. So it does mean in certain situations where you have champions that have ignore defense on their abilities, such as Krutrax's A1, you can reach a position where you can almost ignore 100% defense, simply by having Savage, Helm Smasher, and then 50% from skills. If you think of a champion like Ruel, you can reach 80% ignore defense without having decreased defense up, which is very powerful. So the next set, which is a relatively new set that was added with the Forge, is the Deflection set. Previously, this was only available to Plat players alongside Swift Parry, but now it's much more accessible. Deflection set has niche usages. It'll effectively send back the debuff that your champion will receive every 1 in 4 times. Now, most of the time that RNG is not reliable enough for you to dedicate 4 pieces of your artifact set for. However, in certain niche situations, it can be very powerful. And through my testing of the Nether Spider Paragon Cheese strategy that Stu Gaming came up with, I've actually determined as well that it doesn't just extend debuffs, it will extend instant effects. So when I was testing it, I was noticing that the Nether Spider would also receive the increased debuff duration that you get from attacking the Nether Spider. So for that strategy, Deflection is really powerful. You can reflect back the poisons and also the poison sensitivity and also the debuff extension that you would normally get every 1 in 4 times. It's not a very fast strategy, but it guarantees that a level 50 Paragon could do Nether Spider all the way up to hard 100. It's very powerful. In other usages, you could possibly throw a couple of Deflection sets on your arena team to throw back decreased defense or just to mess things up. It's a bit like Reaction, a bit of RNG always causes a bit of chaos. But otherwise a sort of subpar niche set, but very powerful. Now, this Affinity Breaker set came with the Nether Spider. On paper, it sounds very powerful in the sense that you can convert any weak hit to critical. And this was before when champions like Allure used to suffer in Fire Knight. But when you actually do the math and calculation here, it doesn't actually have much impact whatsoever. So we know there's a 20% chance to convert weak hits to critical. And there's also, from Affinity, 35% chance that you will weak hit a negative affinity. Now, when you do the math and you take 0.35 and times that with 0.2, it basically means you've got a 7% chance that your attack will be converted to a critical hit. So we take that 7 and minus it from the 35% chance to weak hit. What it actually means is a negative affinity champion has a 28% chance of continuing to weak hit. So it's barely worth doing in that sense. We're talking very, very small gains. If anything, what we need to see with this set, minimum 50% if they wanted to keep the same sense, or basically make it so that there's a minus 10% chance for you to weak hit instead. So you actually see some value out of it, and maybe you don't have the damage penalty. But right now, if anyone thinks, oh, Affinity Breaker could be very good for me, it's very, very, very unlikely that it's worth committing 4 pieces in your artifact set for. You're better off just running with speed and going faster and being able to hit more often to avoid the weak hits than you would gain from having an Affinity Breaker set. So there we go, that's the main sets that I wanted to break down there for everyone. Now obviously there are some sets that I haven't talked about or discussed, such as Lifesteal, and some of the new stuff such as Bloodthirst. These sets generally are self-explanatory. You'll heal 30% of those back. And the other main set that I haven't discussed here is Reflex. We did a video on that last week on how Reflex work in great detail. And I think if you want to learn more about Reflex, go check out that video on the channel. But once again, thanks for watching, guys. And next week, we'll bring you another science video where we'll take further deep dives into the data behind the game and try and help you progress through your game. And as always guys, if you like this video, please subscribe to the channel and like the video, as this helps us continue to develop content for you, which will help you progress through the game. So thanks for watching, and catch you in the next video.